In this video, we'll take a look at type conversions in JavaScript. So before that, we'll just take a look at the types of some of the most common things in JavaScript. So let's say I say type of and John, and then I say document.write type of, and I say 3.14, and then I'll just copy and paste this quickly, and I'll say here NaN, which is not number, right? And I'll say here false, which is a boolean, and I'll say here an array which has values 1 2 3 4. Then I'll say an object which has a property called name and age 3 4. Then I'll say here new and date. All right, then you have a function, okay, and then a variable called myCar which has not been defined yet, and then type of null. Now between these I'll just put document.write and a br tag so that everything comes in a separate line and it becomes a lot more readable. Right, now let's run and see what happens. So we get the type of John is string, type of 3.14 is number, nothing surprising there. Type of not a number is also number, which is kind of surprising, right? So it's best to do this on your own once and just to see what the type of all these different things are, so that when you are working with JavaScript, you don't get a confusion, you don't get any errors. And then you have type of false, which is boolean, correct. Type of array is object, so that is something that you need to keep in mind, that array is also an object in JavaScript. Type of object is also obviously object. Type of name, new date is an object, right? And function is function. A variable that's not defined is undefined, and null is an object. So you need to remember all these different things, right, so that you can minimize arrays as much as errors as much as possible. So I'll just remove all of this and I'll just refresh this, right? And then I'll show you how we can determine if a variable is an array. So I know I have covered this in one of the previous videos, but in this video I'll show you a more simple and a more widely used way for it. So let's say we have a function called isArray which takes a value called myArray, and it returns myArray dot constructor is equal to array. So you know that 3 is equal to means it's going to compare the value as well as the type. So that's exactly what we want, right? And this means that we'll have to also call this function isArray and pass myArray. That also means that we have to define the array called myArray. So I'll say var myArray is equal to 1 2 3 4. Now let's see what happens. It's going to give us true because obviously myArray is an array. So this is a more commonly used method to check for arrays. We have seen a more long kind of a notation in one of the previous videos, and this is more commonly used because this can be used across multiple type of data types. So let's say we say my date, okay, instead of my array, and we say here new date, and instead of isArray we have a function, we'll name it isDate, and we'll say here my date, and we'll say here my date dot constructor triple is equal to date, and here instead of isArray we'll call isDate, and instead of myArray we'll call myDate. Okay, run. So we get true because yes, obviously myDate is a date, right? So now I'll show you how we can convert types between different types in JavaScript, and that's what the video is about. So let's say document dot write, and we'll say let's say x is equal to 123, document.write string and x. So you can take a number and you can transform it and confirm it into change it into a string with this method string, right? So if we say here document.write, and then we'll say type of an X, let's see what we get here. We'll get number. But if I take this value inside another variable called y, and I'll say string X, and here I'll document.write y, and check the value here, document.write type of, and I'll check the value of y, the type of y. So first it says number, first it obviously prints y, right? Then it says type of X is number, and but type of y is string, right? So exactly what you wanted, because y has now been 123 has now been converted into a string, which is 123, right? So I hope that makes sense. Even if we say here, if we give an expression instead of a number, if we say 100 plus 23, it's going to add this into 123, and it's going to give you number, and then it's going to convert it into a string. So that also doesn't create a problem here. Now instead of saying string dot inside bracket X, you can also say toString, and you can say here X dot toString, and put these two braces because this is a function at the end of the day. So you get the exact same result with this. So this is also another way of writing the same thing. Now you can also try and pass here values such as false and true, which are booleans, and it's able to convert boolean into string also very easily, right? And you can do the same with a date. So if I say new date, I can do the same. So I'll get date, and earlier this was a date object, but then later on it converted into a string because I told it to convert it into a string, right? And now very similar to this, you can also convert things into number, right? Strings into number, or other data types into number, but there is no function called as x.toString. So there's only a function called just like this, number, and you can pass X inside it. So earlier it was an object, and then it became a number because I told JavaScript to convert into a number. And it could have been a string also. Let's say I said 3.14, and then it converted it into a number, right? 3.414 was a string, then I got number here. But if I try to do this with two numbers at the same time, which is a string, it'll give me nan, because JavaScript can't read basically this whole number because there's a space in between here, right? So even if you try to do this with false and true, you get 0. If you say false, you get 0, and if you say true, you get 1, and you get boolean, and then you get number. And if you try to do this with an empty string, again you get 0, and it's a string and it's a number, then it became a number, right? So I hope you learned how to convert between types in JavaScript, and if you like this video, then do subscribe and do watch the other videos in this series, because they're all very helpful, right? Thanks a lot for watching.